Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Gurudeva, 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 Jaya Gurudeva. Vishpat Paramahans Parivrajacharya Stotarushat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishpat Paramahans Parivrajacharya Stotarushat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 33, Text 20. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayam udirayet Nashtaprayeshva bhadreshu Nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati uttama shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Canto 3 entitled Status Quo, Chapter 33 entitled Activities of Kapila, text number 20. Hitvā tat īpsita-tamam api ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām kiñcit cakāra vadanam putra-viśleṣaṇa āturā hitvā tam īpsita-tamam api ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām kiñcit cakāra vadanam putra-viśleṣaṇāturā hitvā tad īpsita-tamam api ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām kiñcit cakāra vadanam putra-viśleṣaṇāturā hitvā tad īpsita-tamam api ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām kiñcit cakāra vadanam putra-viśleṣaṇāturā. Tamam api ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām kiñcit cakāra vadanam putra-viśleṣaṇāturā hitvā tad īpsita-tamam vadanam putra-viśleṣaṇāturā. Vaishnavis, hitvā tad īpsita-tamam. Hitvā tad īpsita-tamam. ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām. kiñcit cakāra vadanam. putra-viśleṣaṇāturā. hitvā tad īpsita-tamam. ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām. kiñcit cakāra vadanam. putra-viśleṣaṇāturā. Word to word. Hitvā, having given up. Tat, that household. īpsita-tamam, most desirable. Api, even. ākhaṇḍala-yoṣitām, by the wives of Lord Indra. kiñcit cakāra vadanam, she wore a sorry look on her face. putra-viśleṣaṇa, by separation from her son. āturā, afflicted. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Although her position was unique from all points of view, saintly Devahūti, in spite of all her possessions, which were envied even by the ladies of the heavenly planets, gave up all such comforts. She was only sorry that her great son was separated from her. Please respond. Although her position was unique from all points of view, saintly Devahūti, in spite of all her possessions, which were envied even by the ladies of the heavenly planets, gave up all such comforts. She was only sorry that her great son was separated from her. Purport. Devahūti was not at all sorry at giving up her material comforts, but she was very much aggrieved at the separation of her son. It may be questioned here that if Devahūti was not at all sorry to give up the material comforts of life, then why was she sorry about losing her son? Why was she so attached to her son? The answer is explained in the next verse. He was not an ordinary son. Her son was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can give up material attachment, therefore, only when one has attachment for the Supreme Person. This is explained in Bhagavad-gītā. Paraṁ dṛṣṭvā nivartate. Only when one actually has some taste for spiritual existence can he be reluctant to follow the materialistic way of life. The verse once again. Although her position was unique from all points of view, saintly Devahūti, in spite of all her possessions, which were envied even by the ladies of the heavenly planets, gave up all such comforts. She was only sorry that her great son was separated from her. Om ajnanatimirandhasya jnananjanashalakaya chakshur unmilitam yena tasmai Shri Guruve namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prithaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedant Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So we are continuing where Lord Kapila, who is the son of Kardama Muni and Mother Devahūti, has given his mother every possible dialogue about self-realization and enlightenment, and she is completely enlightened now, fully enlightened. and he has left her. So in this verse, as in the previous verses, there is mention of two things, particularly in this verse, attachment and detachment. So attachment is also known as anurag, and detachment is known as vairagya. So here, Mother Devahūti is exhibiting both feelings here. Complete detachment from material comforts, which we should all aim for, but here she was quite sorry to see her son go. We know that we should not develop attachment to our family members because our only attachment should be towards Krishna. So here the question is, why was she so sorry to see her son go? And Srila Prabhupada explains it very simplistically in the purport, and the reason is very simple. Because her son was Lord Kapila, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it was natural for Mother Devahūti to develop that attachment. And it is also mentioned here that for us, our goal is to develop full 100% attachment to the Lord. Because the Lord is our ultimate friend, our ultimate guide, our ultimate mentor here. So as I was preparing this class, I was thinking about what kind of attachments we all have, particularly me, and I was trying to categorize what kind of attachments do I have in this life. We've been following Krishna consciousness for years and years and years, some of you more than 45, 50 years. And I was thinking, what kind of attachments we have. So I prepared a list and I thought about it. There is attachment towards people, like our family members, our near and dear loved ones. There is attachment for things, materialistic things that we have in our houses. There is attachment for food, particularly for those of us who really like to eat. And finally, there is attachment for attitudes and behaviors. Some of us are more introverts, so we like silence and soft-spoken people, while some of us are more extroverts. We like more noise and more excitement in our lives. So despite all this, it is very important to understand that eventually we will have to give up all of these attachments, because our ultimate attachment, as I mentioned earlier, is only towards Krishna. But having said this, it is very important to understand that as devotees, we do not practice a cold-hearted behavior towards anyone. Whether it's our spouse, our child, brother, sister, friends, sangha, we have to have compassion in our heart. Because only through attachment we can develop care. If I'm not attached to something, why would I be caring about that person or that thing? So this attachment which we see of Mother Devahūti towards her husband Kardama Muni is completely bona fide. That attachment between husband and wife is normal. And that attachment as exhibited between this absolutely illustrious pair is not guided by lust at all. In fact, we see how Mother Devahūti served her husband until she became completely emaciated. And her attachment to the son is fully glorified and justified because he's her son and he's also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's very important to understand here that when we talk about attachments, we are talking about an attachment which is completely regulated as well as guided by injunctions given by the Shastras. So attachment per se is not bad, but the attachment of outcome can be quite detrimental depending on how it influences our mental behavior. And we know we need to control our mind, as Srila Rupa Goswami has said in NOI and NOD, mind control is extremely important. That allows us to control our senses and so forth. So as I was researching this, I was thinking about talking about three personalities from different angles. The first personality is Swayambhuva Manu, and then his daughter, Mother Devahūti, and her husband, Kardama Muni. And I was thinking Swayambhuva Manu is a Prajapati, he's the son of Brahma, and his wife's name is Shatarupa. And they were guided by Lord Brahma, as were the other Prajapatis, to populate the universe. That means get into Grihastha ashram and generate a lot of children so that they can populate the planet here. And we know here that Swayambhuva Manu gave rise to a wonderfully beautiful, illustrious daughter, Mother Devahūti. She had two other sisters, Akuti and Prasuti, and he also had two sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapad. So if we start reading the Bhagavatam and you try to make the lineage of who was whose child and whose brother, our mind will get completely bewildered, because the lineage is extremely extensive and everybody is connected in some way or the other. And the reason I'm mentioning about this is, the question that struck me was immediately that Swayambhuva Manu is a great king. He is full of the best luxuries in the world, full of all opulences. And his daughter, Mother Devahūti, is a princess, and she is described as being extremely beautiful, extremely chaste. So how is it possible for a father to give his daughter to somebody who is completely poverty-stricken, penniless, is a sage living in the forest? So I meditated on this, and if this was practiced in the Kali Yuga, current age, no father would be actually willing to do that. That why would I give my daughter, who has been raised in great luxuries, to somebody who is living in a hut in the forest? That's not possible, at least in this age. So what does that tell us about Swayambhuva Manu's character? That when they were choosing either spouses for particularly their daughters, they were not looking at material wealth. They were looking at character. They were looking at morals, the ethics, the power, the spiritual values, and so forth. And then we know the whole Leela behind this, how Kardama Muni was actually guided by Lord Brahma to adopt a wife and generate children. So essentially, here it is also mentioned that Swayambhuva Manu and his wife gladly and happily gave away their daughter to Kardama Muni. So that just tells you how noble and what a high standard there was of the kings at that time. They just wanted the best person for their child, for their daughter. And whether that was a hermit who was living under a tree, or whether that was a king, the important part was character and moral values. And the same thing goes with his second daughter, Akuti, who was married to Prajapati Ruchi, and they generated another son, Yagya, who was actually also an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So both their daughters gave rise to illustrious sons. Mother Devahūti gave rise to Lord Kapila, and Mother Akuti gave rise to Yagya. And they are both two of the 25 Leela avatars of Lord Vishnu, also known as Kalpa avatars. And then we know Prasuti was given to Daksha, who had about, I think, 24 daughters, and 11 of them were given to sages, and 13 were given to Dharma. So we can see here how sages played a very major role in terms of forming a conjugal union between a man and a woman, because they wanted the best for their daughters. And so that is the character of Swayambhuva Manu. And there was absolutely no discontent between husband and wife. When Swayambhuva Manu decided that Devahūti has to be given to Kardama Muni, Prasuti did not raise any Shatarupa did not raise any concern. She gladly went with the guidance of her husband. So that shows a very wonderful alignment between husband and wife, the same thought process. And then the second character in this story is Kardama Muni, who is also the son of Lord Brahma, and he was guided by Lord Brahma to give rise to progeny. And it is mentioned he meditated for 10,000 years by the banks of Saraswati river, and at that time Lord Vishnu came to him and gave him his darshan. And then Kardama Muni actually said to Lord Vishnu, I would like a wife and I would like to generate progeny, essentially. And Lord Vishnu blessed him. So one can ask here that he is a great sage who's known for his austerities. Why would he get into the Grihastha ashram? The answer is pretty simple here. He is not asking to get a wife for his own sense pleasure. He is doing to satisfy Lord Krishna, according to the desire and the will of the Lord. And so it was natural that the union of Kardama Muni and Mother Devahūti was going to give rise to a very illustrious child. That was natural here. And so when we say we are asking for material desires from the Lord, as long as those material desires are regulated and they are meant to be in alignment with the will of Krishna, those material desires are justified. As long as we're not completely overpowered and bewildered by those so-called sense gratificatory desires here. And we know that it was mentioned that Swayambhuva Manu and his wife would come to the forest and present their daughter Devahūti to Kardama Muni, and he should accept her. And it is mentioned that Srila Prabhupada mentions here in Bhagavatam 3:22-15 in the translation and purport that Kardama Muni accepted Mother Devahūti in the first class way of marriage. So what is the first class of way of marriage? I was reading the purport. There's two elements involved. The parents have to be willing and the bride has to be qualified. So these are the two parameters required for a first class marriage. And in this case, both were satisfied. Swayambhuva Manu was completely willing to give his daughter, and Devahūti, Mother Devahūti, was fully qualified to become Kardama Muni's wife. And after hearing about Kardama Muni's great character, she had already given her heart to Kardama Muni. So there was no question of looking at the outer body considerations, that he is a very austere sage living in a hut in the forest. She was beyond the bodily platform. She was already attracted to his character, his moral values, just like Mother Rukmini was attracted without seeing Lord Krishna, just by hearing about his qualities. So the power of hearing is so important here. And the third character here is Mother Devahūti, as I mentioned, a very beautiful princess, and a lot of princes would give up their lives to have her hand. But then she completely followed what her parents had designed for her. So what does that tell about Mother Devahūti? One, that she completely followed what her parents had decided for her. That if they chose this husband or this man as a husband, she willingly accepted. So that reflects her chastity. And second, her character reflects is she was not looking at how handsome or how good looking her husband was, although it is described that Kardama Muni was quite good looking as a sage, but she was attracted by his character, his attitude, and his basically spiritual values. And third very important point, which is important for both of us, whether we are in the male body or the female body, was she was guided not by a sensual attraction to Kardama Muni, she was guided by a sense of service. And that is defined in the Bhagavatam in these previous chapters, how she served Kardama Muni so faithfully, and she did not even pay attention to her body. It is defined how her hair became grey, she lost all health, she was emaciated, and she was completely serving Kardama Muni very beautifully. And eventually, she developed a desire to have a child, as any normal woman would do. Which woman would not develop a desire to have a child? That is the way Krishna has made the women, to have the natural tendency to give rise to a child and develop affection for a child. And so this was completely normal. Mother Devahūti developed a desire to have a child, and then of course we know the whole history, how Kardama Muni generated this amazing aerial mansion to make the atmosphere very conducive for developing the right affection between the husband and wife and generating the environment. And we know they gave rise to 9 daughters first, and those 9 daughters were married away to the 9 yogis, and eventually the last child was Lord Kapila, and Kardama Muni had decided that once my son is born, and he had taken darshan of Lord Kapila, he actually left his wife. So here it is said here, Mother Devahūti developed attachment for her son, which is natural, and who would not develop attachment to such an illustrious son, who is basically enlightening her how to get out of this material cycle of birth and death. So that is the most, who would not like to have a son like that? It's an amazing son. And Mother Devahūti gave up all her attachment to her material comforts here. The aerial mention, it's defined very nicely in the previous verses. Gold and jewels, and the mattresses were soft like cotton and so forth. It's an amazing description. But she gave up all of that. Yet she had attachment for her son. But then we know she was completely enlightened, and eventually she did go back to Godhead here. So I was reading about other great personalities who had attachment. Their attachment was completely guided in the right direction. So I was thinking of Mother Devahūti, but so many other women came into my mind from our Vedic scriptures. First was Mother Sita. And it is mentioned that Mother Sita was born in a so-called Kshatriya family, daughter of King Janak, who was a great Kshatriya, and Lord Ram was born of King Dashrath, again another Kshatriya. So this is very interesting when I was reading how the marriages between Kshatriya and Kshatriya were allowed, Brahman and Brahman were allowed. If a Brahman marries a daughter of a Kshatriya, that is allowed, and that kind of marriage is, I believe, known as Anuloma, that is sanctified. But if a Kshatriya marries a daughter of a Brahman, that is not sanctified, that is not recommended, that is known as Pratiloma. So this is so interesting when we see, Esa did some more research, because this was a marriage between a daughter of a Kshatriya getting married to a Brahman. So that was completely bona fide and sanctified here. So as I did more research, it is mentioned in, I believe, Manusmriti. So the daughter of a Kshatriya getting married to a Brahman is allowed. Yeah, the daughter of a Kshatriya. But the opposite is not allowed. So a Kshatriya man cannot marry the daughter of a Brahmin. That is known as Pratiloma. So when I was reading Manusmriti, it's very interesting how it kind of applies, well, may or may not apply to us in Kali Yuga, that there's 8 kinds of marriages. We won't have time to go over it, but it's very interesting how of these 8 kind of marriages, 4 are not recommended and 4 are recommended. So this marriage between Kardama Muni and Mother Devahūti was completely first class, as Srila Prabhupada has mentioned. So when we see Mother Sita, that was the union between 2 Kshatriya clans here. But Mother Sita, when Lord Ram was given the benediction, not benediction, the curse to go to the forest and exiled, Mother Sita could have chosen to stay back and serve her father-in-law and her mothers-in-law. She was raised in complete luxury in the palace of King Janak. But she left everything. Why? Because she wanted to be with Lord Ram. She wanted to serve him. So there was no attachment from Mother Sita's side for any luxurious comforts here. She was completely surrendered. So this is another great personality. Same thing goes with Mother Draupadi. She was raised by King Drupad in great luxury. And she was given the command by her mother-in-law not to marry one person but to marry 5 men. And she accepted that willingly. So this just shows you the character of these absolutely amazing, wonderful Vaishnavis who, from an outwardly experience, it may seem like they are too attached to their husbands. They are not attached to their husbands. They are attached to doing service to their husbands. So that shows their level of chastity and the great service attitudes. They gave up all comforts. They gave up all luxuries to be with their husbands, whether they had to tread on thorns in the forest or they had to take multiple husbands here, and which was completely sanctioned here, as we see in the Mahabharata. And then another thing that came into my mind was when I was trying to understand how attachment and detachment are both bona fide. Although we use the word attachment sometimes in a negative connotation, but here one interesting story that I read, which I'm sure all of you know, is Parashuram, Bhargava Parashuram, who is also an incarnation of Lord Krishna. His father Jamadagni and mother Renuka, very illustrious. His father Jamadagni gave him the instruction, you kill your mother. I mean, that's a huge instruction. Which son would kill his mother? And there's a whole story here, how Mother Renuka, when she went to the river to take a bath, she saw the Apsaras having a great time and kind of joyfully playing with the king of the Gandharvas, whose name was Padmamali. And she, for a fleeting moment, just for a millisecond, developed a desire to also enjoy with the king of Gandharvas. And the moment she had this desire, she immediately felt, oh my God, what I've done. And she knew, because she was so chaste and so surrendered to her husband, when she came back, Jamadagni knew about it. Same thing, exactly the same way like Gautam Rishi knew about Mother Ahilya. And here Jamadagni became quite angry at his wife that how dare she develop this so-called very, very tiny sensual desire for somebody else. And so he told his sons, other sons, that you go and kill your mother because she is contaminated. Only by the thought process. That was the level of the ladies at that time. Just by thinking fleetingly, they would be cursed by their husbands. What to speak of now, where there is absolutely no regulation going on in Kali Yuga. And so those sons refused. They said, no, we cannot kill our mother. And so Jamadagni came to his son, Parashuram, who is a great warrior, and said, you kill your mother. And also kill your brothers, because they refuse to follow my order. And Parashurama is very, very intelligent. Because he thought, if I don't kill my mother and my brothers, I'll be cursed by my father. And if I kill, he will be very pleased with me, and he'll ask me for a benediction. And when he asks me for a benediction, I will ask him, please give the life back to my mother and all the other brothers. So he's such a wonderful son. And so he killed his mother, he killed his brothers, and Jamadagni became very pleased and said, yes, I am very pleased with you, ask for what you want. And he said, please bring my mother and my brothers back to life. So this is the intelligence, and of course Parashuram is one of the Dash avatars here. So here, did Parashuram exhibit attachment to his mother, or was he more intent on following the order of his father? I'm still kind of figuring out how do we define this. If he had great attachment for his mother, like his brothers did, he would have refused. But here, what he did was used his intelligence to satisfy both. He resulted in his mother coming back to life, and at the same time his father was completely joyful and satisfied too here. So here we see that attachment to Krishna is completely recommended and required if we want to be liberated from this path of birth and death. But attachment to other kinds of things should be minimized here. And I was just reading as I was preparing that what kind of strange things people have done in this age. And just yesterday I read that there was a woman, I'm not going to name or talk about her nationality here, just to be sensitive. There's a woman in 2024, when she became sick, she was in the nursing home, and none of her children came to visit her at all to ask her about her health. And she gave $2.8 million away to her dog. So I was just thinking, amazing, what is the level of intelligence? She could have given those millions of dollars away to anybody, maybe a church, to a non-profit organization, but she gave it to a dog, a Maltese dog, apparently quite cute. But what does that tell you about the level of attachment that people are developing in today's world? Completely misguided. What is the dog going to do with $2.8 million? Doesn't even know, probably eat up all the dollars, essentially. The dog has no distinction what is newspaper and what is a green dollar bill. So here, I just want to end the class by really summarizing what is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport, that development to Krishna is what is needed, whether it is in Shantaras, Dasaras, Sakyaras, Vatsalyaras, or Madhuryaras. For us, we start at the lowest platform as essentially develop attachment in a mood of awe and reverence. But that attachment has to begin somewhere. And so, for us, we love our families, we love our friends and so forth, but eventually we have to remember, we don't want to be overwhelmed by these attachments in such a way that when it comes for detachment, we become completely morose and bewildered, and we forget Krishna at the last moment. That will be a failure of this entire human life. So with this, I would like to end the class. If there is any questions or corrections or feedback, Bhagavati Prabhu, right here.
Vindranath doesn't have his fact checker question ready? No? Okay. One important addition, I have a question, but just one important addition to that story you told about Parashuram. When his father offered him the benediction, he asked that you bring my mother and my siblings back to life, and they don't remember that I killed them.
Yes.
That was part of it. So here's my question. So it sounds like in these early days there was a lot of care and attention taken to producing not just population but good population. So in the Skanda Purana there's a verse where Lord Krishna instructs Lord Shiva to propagate a philosophy that will cause people to be averse to him, resulting in that the creation of unwanted population like that. You familiar with that verse?
No, Prabhu.
Oh yeah, it's
No,
in Skanda Purana. I was just wondering, how do you... Anyway, there's a verse like that, so I was just wondering, why is Krishna instructing Lord Shiva to propound the philosophy that's going to cause people to be averse to him, and as a result of that, create unwanted population? It sounds like it's the opposite of what is supposed to be going on.
Population who will become atheistic.
Yes, Prabhu, I haven't...
If I can understand that order was given, he will become Sankaracharya, and because they were misusing the Vedas to go away from the real path of bhakti. So then, in that sense, but not to... What was the thing you were saying? What was the thing you were saying? The last part?
Inimical to the Lord.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a question there.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the lecture. I always think about attachments because I'm very attached to my family. And I always think about if it's a time I get a chance to go home. I always wonder if I would be able to let them go or to cross over, So I was told by somebody that when you go home, that generations get liberated, right? Everybody goes home. But then I was hearing this lecture and it talked about how that's not true, that everybody has free will and everybody has the chance to make that decision. So I wanted to know what you thought about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. Prabhupada Prabhu, please can you pass the mic to him? Jasmine was asking the question. Prabhu, can you give him the mic? Brigupati Prabhu, yes.
I know the answer to that question because Prabhupada was directly asked about that by one of his disciples. Exactly, Prabhupada says here that, when somebody becomes a pure devotee, so many generations backwards and forwards become liberated. And the devotee asked Prabhupada, what is meant by that liberation? And Prabhupada said, liberation means opportunity to engage in devotional service. See, so that would answer. That means the person's free will is still preserved, but they're going to get an opportunity to engage in devotional service. It's not that they necessarily go back to Godhead or whatever, but that's how Prabhupada answered that question on that occasion. They'll get the opportunity to be engaged in devotional service. Prabhupada said that is liberation, so they can take it or not. But the opportunity will be there.
Thank you, Prabhu. So you got it, Jasmine. I think liberation is referring to the opportunity to do seva for the Lord, because it is devotional service which will eventually get us back to Godhead.
There is an interesting also story that happened in the case of Mother Kunti Devi. But that's totally different, but it's in relation to family. It's not applicable maybe to us, but just to know, it says that, O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please, therefore, sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. Now, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis are very elevated devotees. When I came across with this statement a long time ago, I thought, what's wrong? My whole family is devotee. Why should I give them up? But then Prabhupada keeps explaining there. Further in the purport, if you can read the purport of that. And ultimately what happens is that in another prayer also, Queen Kunti Devi says, just as the water of the Ganges flows without obstructions to the river, to the ocean, similarly, don't let my attention be diverted. So when we live in this material world, even family members sometimes can bring you back to the material world. So that's the danger of like, you can say, well, as much as we love them, maybe a family in this lifetime, it can be in many other lifetimes. And there's another story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita when Lord Chaitanya was dancing in the Shiva Sangan, and his song, or the owner of the house, Srivas Thakur, was totally detached. The mothers were crying. Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is dancing in ecstasy. But this particular devotee, Srivas, was so attached to the Lord, even his son being dead, he went and asked to them, what's going on? What happened to the family? Oh, our son died. And he says, don't cry, don't disturb the Lord. He was in another level of platform. We cannot compare with that. But I'm just giving these examples that later on when he was brought back to life, is that the same pastime? Brought back to life, he says, which father? It's like, why did you left so soon? He says, my Lord, he's asking to the dead person, the boy who died. He says, my Lord, he says, by your will everything happens. I had families before. He said, which father, which mother? So this is just philosophical, but bringing back to your point is that, yes, family attachments, it can be also an obstructions, provided that they're like totally into Krishna consciousness. But if we're not at that level, we have to be very careful. We cannot artificially become detached. No. You just keep following the orders of the spiritual master, your devotional service. Krishna can reveal to you things. So, I don't know if I...
Hare Krishna, Mataji, thank you for your wonderful class. So, in the point that Sachidananda Prabhu is speaking about not to be too much attached to family members, I think that we should be careful and not to cross the line of not being neglected also, because if we show too much detachment, if we are not mature, we might also cross the line and be neglectful to our family members or someone that actually depends on us. So that's a very, I don't know if you can explain more about it, or
I think that nurturing, any relationship needs nurturing. If there's no nurturing, that relationship is a cold, dead relationship. So what to speak of family members? Amongst ourselves, amongst Sangha, we need to have loving relationships. That's one of the 6 exchanges, as Srila Rupa Goswami has said, amongst other things.
If there's no questions, I like questions.
But there's some, Prabhu is on the back there.
Yeah, I guess question and comment on this. Thank you for the wonderful class as always also. But in psychology, there's like attachment theory. There's a whole, that children require that, and if not, then they develop ADD and other more severe mental illness and social issues if there isn't sufficient attachment. And we can see, I have personal experience growing up in the Krishna consciousness movement where perhaps there wasn't a mature application of the sense of attachment. I was trying to be a detached husband, and I'm now divorced. So there's, I see the real world consequences of not having a mature application, and particularly as we read Srimad Bhagavatam sort of incrementally, and one doesn't have a vast overview of knowledge, and like coming from the West where we don't have the embodied practice through generations of how to apply this knowledge. How do we find a balanced way, or is it just sort of providence of the Lord? Is this, we're going to have to suffer a few generations until we figure out how to apply this in a balanced way?
I think balance is just utilizing our intelligence and also seeking guidance from very successful marriages. That's why the counselor system, at least we practice that in some temples. I think seeking guidance from people who have been in Krishna consciousness and are leading very solid relationships and having an open heart-to-heart chat is very important. But again, I think affection is such a natural phenomenon for all of us. We're not born with cold hearts. We are born to be loved, and we are born to love others. So that should be natural, but like he said, you have to draw the line. In Krishna consciousness, compassion is such an important element. We even save a little ant. So when we are so careful about not stepping on an ant, why should we be so cruel and so cold towards a human being like a wife or a husband? That shows that we are pretenders, essentially, right? So we treat every living entity with compassion. And so when we're talking about humans in our life, I think it's really, I'm coming back to his point, you have to draw the line. So we don't become fanatical, over-attached, sensual, and eventually the whole goal is, are we able to remember Krishna in all these attachments? Or are these attachments taking me away from Krishna? Because those can be suffocating and those can be misleading. So Krishna has given us the intelligence to make that decision. He's given us the free will. So we need to decide how do we practice that free will. And as we know, it's Guru Sadhu Shastra. So we have to learn from seniors, we have to study the injunctions of the Shastras, and we are all educated. As we grow from child to youth to old age, we are all educated. So eventually I would say use your intelligence, create a balance, and if there are problems in the marriage, do not speculate, do not become bewildered, but seek the guidance of people who are qualified to guide you. Rather than saying, you and I are not getting well along, so let's just split. That's not the way it works. There is help available, there is guidance available, but we need to take the first step, and we need to have faith in the words of people who are leading very successful marriages, because they can guide us, right? You cannot preach if you do not practice the same thing yourself. So you cannot preach to others, have a successful marriage, if you don't show yourself that I have a very successful marriage. So I would say lots of factors, multiple variables are involved here, but eventually use your intelligence.
Can I make
Absolutely.
I see some of Srila Prabhupada, he talks about these paradoxes, like every girl should be married, every man should be a brahmachari, and there's sometimes these paradoxical situations. One of them, and I think sometimes the tension is there between this of compassion and jivadoya, and then liberation, our own liberation. And that sometimes we can become callous and just what do I, or even some of the prayers that are offered, let me be detached from my family. And we can take it I don't want any involvement in this material world, and so I'll cut off all those relationships and starve where natural affection should be there, because I want to get out of this world of suffering. And then there's being overly attached and remaining in samsara. So yeah, it just seems like a natural tension that I think perhaps within each devotee we have to figure out that balance, so that we're not, because we can see also in whether it's a promiscuous girl or something aborting her baby because she wants the freedom to be able to live the rest of her life without the burden of a child, or a yogi who's neglects all other relationships because they don't want involvement in the world. That sense of or killing the infanticide with the girl child because you don't want to pay a dowry. Or there's so many harsh ways brutal ways that people can be when they don't want the burden of something, and we lose that humanity or lose that softness. And I see it in my own character, and it's shocking. But I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that, because liberation is needed, and involvement. So sorry, that was a bit more of a complex
No, thank you. But I just want to make a quick comment here in terms of the paradox you mentioned. Srila Prabhupada has also written that people in householder life, a man in a householder life is a brahmachari if the marital relationship is completely regulated. So from the formal varnashram system, then there's 4 classes, but even a householder is a brahmachari if the union is done solely for generating Krishna conscious progeny. So from that point of view, it's very important. And the second point, I've lost my thought right now. I had something in my mind which I wanted to mention, but it slipped. Yeah. It's just, she just had a comment, yes. Jasmine, she had a hand raised.
I just wanted to ask, what if you had like a family member that's pulling you away from Krishna? Then what's the responsibility there? Can you detach without the, the burden or the regret?
Yeah, so if you read, I'm trying to get the reference, how we maintain 4 kinds of attitudes towards 4 kinds of people. Towards Krishna, it's of love. And the 4th one is people who are envious, who are inimical to Krishna, we ignore them. So please, someone correct me. There's 4 kinds of attitudes we exhibit towards the Lord, our friends, and then the 4th category is people who are envious. We tactfully and respectfully ignore them. You don't want to have the association. So I was speaking to a very senior devotee several months ago, and he was commenting that when we associate with, I don't like to use the word karmis or materialists, when we associate with people who are not Krishna conscious, we need to give more than we take from them. Because we have a lot to give, but they don't have much to give to us. Actually, we have everything. Srila Prabhupada has given us everything. So if your family members don't have anything much to give to you, and what you're giving to them is not being accepted as graceful, as generous, it's time to, I would not say completely detach, but develop a distance. Because they make a dominate you, right? We are still kind of saplings in Krishna consciousness, trying to be very strong in our bhakti. So Maya is very strong, by the way. She's Krishna's energy, so we need to be very careful. That is why amongst the 5 S's, Sangha is so very important. Sangha, Seva, Swadhyaya, Sadhana, and one more S. So Sangha is one of the top elements. So associate with like-minded people so that we build an armor around ourselves to protect us from the onslaught of Maya. That's the way I look at Sangha.
Is that because anybody can play Maya, right? Even family members?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's why we have to be compassionate. Our whole goal is to give them Krishna consciousness. That's it. That is our goal. And not to take anything from them, essentially, unless they give us Krishna consciousness, which is going to be difficult.
Thank you.
Prabhu, right after that. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you for the wonderful lecture this morning. I was thinking also about interpersonal conflicts and familial relationships, and being aware of projecting on other people and saying, oh, they're not Krishna conscious and I'm Krishna conscious, because that doesn't sound very Krishna conscious to me. Like, I'm this and you're that, and it's like that kind of defeats the point too. And so I think that another way that I have tried to look at this process is they're teaching me something about myself in the if they're drawing me away from Krishna consciousness, or if they're representing something that's very challenging. And so I just wanted to add that perspective.
Sure.
Less about division and more about the humility of being taught by everyone around us, which is also Krishna consciousness.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
That brings me to the point that Srila Rupa Goswami has said, accept anything that is favorable to devotional service and reject everything that is not favorable to devotional service. So that's where we draw the line. And that applies to people also. People who are giving us devotional service, we associate with them. And likewise, the opposite is also true. Govinda Krishna Prabhu, you had a question or a comment? Sorry.
Thank you for the wonderful class, Mati, especially the ideal marriages example that you shared, Sita Maya and Draupadi. So one question that is arising in my mind, so we're talking about attachment and the ideal marriages. So this might be a little bit controversial, but since it's in my head, I want to ask, I need some clarity. So on one side, the Varnashana Dharma says, like after Vanaprastha, like at the age of 50, after 50 we should go towards detachment. And when we see very senior devotees, even in our movement, like they're getting married at the age of 70, 75. So how should we see that as attachment, detachment, ideal marriages? Because the next generation is obviously going to follow, as they say, what the seniors do. So when something like this happens, or we see they're also holding very, very big posts, and then you see suddenly that someone at the age of 75 is getting married, so then you get bewildered. Is it attachment? Is it detachment? Is it an ideal marriage going on right now? So how should we see this? Thank you.
I would absolutely defer this to the senior devotees here. I'm not qualified to answer this. That's what I would answer in simple word, Maya, but if there's, like you said, it's a controversial question, and I don't like to quote controversies.
Well, these things happen, but I don't think we should dwell on it too much. There's people become attached at a certain age, and maybe they were thinking about it all the time, and eventually they just can't hold on anymore, and they get married. It's just Maya, and not that we should reject them, but we should just feel sorry for them, and just try to help them as much as we can. But it does happen. It's happened throughout the history of the world of Krishna consciousness. This is not something new. It happens. I would say there would be a real difficulty if it was wholesalely happening, if it was happening all over the place. But these are unique situations, and all you can do is feel sorry for that individual and just pray to Krishna that even though they may have had that particular fall down, that they still remember Krishna, and somehow or other they can again come back and start all over again in Krishna consciousness. So I think we should just pray for them.
That's true.
And feel very happy in our own sense that we don't go down to that particular path, that we ourselves don't become attached at that age and do something of that nature. So that's why it's so good to have good association, and that association is essential for making advancement. And if we take it seriously, then the result will be that we'll be Krishna conscious. If we don't focus and don't take it serious, then all these kind of issues happen, and we'll have these difficulties. So I don't think we should think just because you're in Krishna consciousness you're like a pure devotee. You have a lot of attachments. We all do, and we struggle every day. Even getting up in the morning and going to bed at night, we struggle with our attachments, but we don't act on them.
Right.
And we take shelter of Krishna and association of devotees in devotional service. Sometimes we find when these things happen, maybe devotees aren't really engaged nicely in serving Krishna. Maybe they're doing other things. So it's hard to say, but in the long run, we should feel sorry for them and pray for them, and hope that it doesn't come, that we don't.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yes, and Govind Krishna Prabhu, so as Swasa Prabhu said very nicely, we should not consider ourselves completely immune. It could happen to us. Like Maya is so strong, we should not think that I'm completely pure. It can happen to us. And also, Srila Prabhupada would never reject anyone. He would simply see the service that person has done for Krishna, and he would welcome them with open arms. There's a whole story about somebody living in Hawaii, I don't remember, but Prabhupada said, go and get him back. So that is the compassion. So our whole society is based on the foundation of compassion. Otherwise, why would we spend 10 hours on the street giving books and talking? It's all compassion. So I would say, be grateful to Srila Prabhupada for bringing Krishna in our life, but also be very, very cautious about Maya, who is Krishna's energy.
The principle is yukta vairagya. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to mate, and we defend. That's natural for the living entity. What we have to do is take more Krishna consciousness. All that just automatically dissipates. That's how we can get completely detached from the material world. You have to eat, but don't just eat Krishna prasadam. That's the principle. So if we just accept all those different instructions, naturally you become detached. And if we don't eat prasadam, if we eat all kinds of stuff, who knows what, there's a difficulty. If you sleep too much, there's a difficulty. Eat too much, there's a difficulty. So this yukta vairagya is a natural process. And as you advance in Krishna consciousness, will naturally become detached from eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. It's a natural process. but we have to take it serious and execute it.
Thank you so much. I think with those absolutely lovely words, I'd like to end the Bhagavatam class. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.